Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Year with Jesus. Have you ever experienced feeling overwhelmed by darkness and it weighs heavy on you and perhaps even in you? Last year, as Christmas drew near and invites came in for end-of-year Christmas parties and fairy lights adorned front lawns and Christmas movies were on the television, we had a big blow-up Santa swaying in the breeze next door. I just found it hard to be happy. I wrote a post about it on Facebook. I said something like, this Christmas more than any other, I'm thinking especially of the grieving and of the sick and the suffering. I'm also thinking about the war-ravaged communities of this world, especially the children who have only known suffering. The night before writing that, I'd gone with a few friends to a nearby suburb to see all the amazing Christmas decorations adorning the houses. But as I'm walking along, I'm feeling this weird disconnect between the supposed season of joy and the measure of human suffering taking place in the world. Darkness has a way of robbing you of joy, a way of stealing your hope. I haven't experienced full-blown depression, but I imagine that those who do experience that kind of darkness in a sustained and debilitating way. So I think it's very appropriate that we give attention to what John says about Jesus. John says that Jesus was life, and that life was the light of all humankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Every generation has had its fair share of darkness. If we think about our own generation, there's international conflict, there's human greed, injustices, suffering of the innocent, oppression, corruption, environmental pollution, power tripping and self-seeking agendas. There's darkness in government, in our media, in our financial systems, across social media. There's even darkness in the institutions of the church. That shouldn't be the case, but it is. And this is just the darkness that is out there. Then, of course, there's the darkness that is closer to home. Issues of mental health, depression, anxiety, addictions, breakdown in relationships, domestic violence, abuse, aggressive drivers, manipulation, control. Then there's grief and disappointment, personal guilt, and all of us have known something of this. Sometimes we're victims of the darkness around us. Other times we are perpetrators of the darkness. Our personal capacity to speak and to think and to act in ways that hurt ourselves and hurt others is an ever-present reality. Well, that's all a bit morbid, but it's not all dark, of course. We live in a beautiful world, if you can find a place that hasn't been destroyed by humans. A swim in the ocean, a walk in the bush. All of this reminds us that darkness is not all-consuming. And of course, human beings can be and often are very decent and kind and loving. But there's no denying the pervasiveness of darkness, both beyond us and inside us. We wish it wasn't so, but it too often is. One thing I like about the Bible is it's very real. It doesn't attempt to deny this darkness, and even its greatest heroes, Abraham, Sarah, King David, the great Apostle Paul, are all flawed human beings seeking to do God's will. A large section of the Old Testament of the Bible involves the call of God to the Israelites. Part of their calling involved being a light to the nations, and they had patches of brilliance. The surrounding nations were like, wow, you must have an amazing God. Look how blessed you are. But tragically, most of the time, the history of the Israelite nation is very, very dark. There's corruption, injustice, oppression, hypocrisy, and violence. They were called to be a light to the nations, but on most counts, they failed dismally. That's the truth. Into that darkness, God raised up prophets who reminded the people of their divine calling. And these prophets tried to get the people back on track. They called for change, but most of the time that change never came. If that was the end of it, it would be altogether depressing. But as well as speaking into the current situation, the prophets looked beyond their current time to a time when God himself would intervene in world affairs, when God himself would bring the light that was sorely needed. And this is the context for the arrival of Jesus Christ. In around 4 CE, Israel was in a very dark place. For 200 years, they had suffered under the oppression of their Roman rulers. They were second-class citizens in their own land. They had to pay exorbitant taxes to Caesar. They were restricted in movement, denied opportunity, and their religious leaders, who you would think should have supported and guided them through these tough times, were no help at all, concerned more for their own status and power than they were for the needs of the people. Into this darkness, God didn't speak words through prophets. He spoke the Word, and that Word was Jesus. As John says, in him was life, and that light was the light for all humankind. It's not just John that references this coming light. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus is described as the rising sun that will come to us from heaven to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the path of peace. Then as Jesus begins his ministry, Matthew writes, "Land of Zebulun and land of Naphtali, the way of the sea, beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles, the people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned." And the birth of Jesus was announced, of course, by a light in the sky, a big bright star on a dark night, a divine sign that this baby is no ordinary baby. And the Eastern Magi, that word actually means astrologers or astronomers, travelled in the darkness following the star until they arrived at the place where Jesus was, and there they worshipped him. Now let's apply some of this to our life. However dark your world may be right now, God announces light. That light comes in the form of his Son, who is the light of the world. But here's a very important point. When the life of Jesus comes into your life, the circumstances of your world may not change at all. They might, but they might not. But even in the darkness, you will have hope because you have a light. You will change. The way you think about your circumstances will change. The psalmist writes, "If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you." Sorry I had to talk so much about darkness in this episode, but we need to appreciate the reality of darkness if we are to welcome the light of the world into our lives. Another way we could express it is light gets its meaning from darkness. Down below, I'm going to link to a song. It's a song called "I Have a Light" by Don Potter, written probably 20 years ago. And if you get one song stuck in your head this week, it might as well be this one. And there's a beautiful slideshow that I've put together to go along with it. And the photographs, most of them were taken by my friend Sandy. And the words of this song say, "I have a light and it always shines. It shines in the day and it shines in the night. And when the dark days come and the sun isn't bright, I will be shining, for I have a light." For me, that's a beautiful summary of the difference Jesus makes to our lives. I hope you enjoy listening. See you in the next video.